Hi, welcome to Reawakening Beauty. I'm your host, Shawna Patruno. I'm so excited to have you here. I love talking about all things skin-related, beauty-related, and mind-related. Here I empower you, mind, body, skin, and soul. Hi, I'm so excited, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. She likes to go by Rosie Glow, and we're talking about multidimensional yoga. So yoga is very mainstream nowadays, and Rosie, what you've actually done with this is kind of cultivated a new type of yoga that's not mainstream, and you're kind of encompassing all facets of the human experience with that. Would you like to expand a little bit more with your wording and not mine?
Thank you so much, Shawna. It's great to be here. So I am Rosie Glow. This is my soul name, and really it means a channel of divine grace. And the way I take that is the power of revelation, which I believe is so important in relation to yoga. So we're getting together to talk about multidimensional yoga, which has been something that has been cultivating in my consciousness in the last few years. And it's come from a background primarily of me initially training in Hatha yoga and then very quickly moving into different styles of women's yoga. I was a teacher trainer for an organization called Birthlight from 2019 till literally just a couple of years ago. And this specialized in fertility, pregnancy, birth, postnatal yoga, baby yoga. So I learned a lot about yoga that hasn't really become very mainstream yet. It's only been in those areas. And yet, you know, the yoga that's really popular that we know, whether it's vinyasa, whether it's hot yoga, whether it's hatha, is more of a masculine form. And this is how multidimensional yoga really came about, because I have been on a huge journey myself of self-development and self-discovery. And yoga was my main medium, if you like, for many years. I was very blessed to train as a Reiki master through my late mother, Mary Evans. And so I was bringing in this soul consciousness, if you like, into this physical form. But what I came to understand is that we are learning so much about what we need today. And obviously, yoga has come to us as a system that's at least 5,000 years old. And there are different systems in terms of classical path, tantric path, Advaita Vedanta path. And most people love yoga as a physical practice. And then they get into the spiritual practice, but we can get really locked into our heads about it. So for me, multidimensional yoga is the combination of a physical, emotional, spiritual, and psychological practice as a way of us being able to embody more of our soul light in our physical bodies, and therefore to be able to learn to co-create our reality consciously by changing the way we view the world. And that's really what got me into yoga. I remember reading in a book that when we change our view of the world around us changes, and that got me hooked. And physical yoga is kind of how we get to bring this into our reality and learn how to co-create consciously.
I absolutely love that you're explaining how we can consciously create things. And I love that you are bringing both sides of this to yoga. So you're encompassing a little bit of the masculine side and the feminine. Could you expand a little bit, Rosie, for how this all comes together with anchoring into the body?
Absolutely. So when I say that the physical forms that we are used to that are popular are masculine forms, what I mean is they operate like on our yoga mat in a sagittal plane. You kind of go forward and backwards, right? It's very much about, well, a set of rigid movements, postures that you do a certain way. And so what we end up doing is sort of imposing a structure on an already existing body, if you like, without necessarily undoing the habits and the cellular memory that already exists. So to backtrack a little bit, you know, the work that I've done, obviously, in these early influences and working from conception through to the first 7 years of life, I've become very aware of how the person we think we are is who we've been conditioned to be. And our time in the womb is very, very significant for us sort of shaping our expectation of the world, whether it's going to be safe or whether it's going to be a world that we need to protect ourselves from. And there's some really wonderful research around how babies in the womb contract their bodies when there is stress or fear around and they hear a loud noise, etc. And that directly relates to our mobility, like to our hip mobility and even our capacity to breathe deeply. So when I say a feminine form, I mean that what is important for us is to marry the left and the right side of our brains, to be able to marry the idea that we firstly need to undo patterns of quote unquote dysfunction, misalignments that sort of trigger our capacity to be more aligned with struggling to survive rather than being aligned with thriving. And as a result of that, when we can kind of undo these inherited postures, if you like, expectations of life, you often hear like a hunched back is hereditary, for example, or tight hips are hereditary. But much of that is also relating to the mindset that we inherit, right? It's not one or the other. They're not separate. We're not biomechanical creatures only. We're sentient beings constantly responding to the world around us. And we're always observing those around us before we consciously think about what we're doing. So for me, what I really see multidimensional yoga does is it gives you the opportunity to firstly make space in your being to undo the tensions that you have inherited and the learned behaviors and patterns in your body, and then to be able to allow this alignment with the divine, which, more recent training that I did was in Anusara Yoga in 2010. And I loved the idea that they connected you to optimal alignment in your body, so that all of your systems are open to channel more of your light and your love and your connection to your soul. So really, to simplify it, because it's so many different layers and our minds love to try and understand things, it's about being at ease in your body, being able to create the space for change, and then to discover what is really right for you. So we have a 0-point alignment, a zero balance, that when we're in flow and we're not hunching the front of the body or the back, we create the space for more of who we are. And who we are is not who we've been conditioned to be. It's our divine essence. We're all divine sparks of a unified consciousness expressed individually. So you get this opportunity to kind of play, to work with spirals, to work with figure of eights, to work with activating your connection to your earth chakra and to this planet and the crystalline grid under the earth, which, if you know anything about mycelium, you know the connected universe or connected planet underneath. We're all connected to each other. So first of all, we disconnect from everyone outside and everything outside to reconnect with what's inside of us. And then we're able to allow our true form to be downloaded and to expand beyond what we know into the infinite field of possibilities, into playfulness, into being able to bring a more aligned structure through us without forcing it into our bodies. Does that make sense to you?
That makes so much sense. So essentially, you're going out of this place of having to force life into cultivating this beautiful relationship with trusting life. Now, as someone who has personally gone through hurdles, your brain starts to be kind of stuck on old past programming. So if someone's going through fear or they've had a lot of trauma, upset, things that have happened in their life, how can we shift them out of that place of expecting the worst into trusting and cultivating this beautiful new relationship with their life and unlimited possibilities?
Like I said, in terms of these early influences, we pick up a way of being anxious from our time in the womb, from our expectations. Like what I describe to my clients is that when we're in the womb space, our mother is like a periscope, kind of downloading information to us through hormones as to the world we're coming into. So we're living in a highly adrenalized world. We're all addicted to adrenaline. And even if our mothers lived very peacefully and were very happy in their pregnancies, our birthing practices still to this day kind of, without meaning to, tend to encourage trauma at birth, even though we have all of 40 years, 50 years worth of research to show how we can overcome that. So we're still very risk averse as humans, and we are definitely addicted to fear and drama. So how do we shift that? Well, we've got a nervous system response to work with, right? Which is very much about activating the out breath and really learning to lengthen that out breath so we can take a deeper in breath. This would also involve allowing sounds to be made by your body, right? That are not sort of, we have to we have to yam, we have to do this, which is prescriptive, but it's like, what does your body want to do? How does your body want to release this? Animals shake when they're stressed, right? So, for me, the yoga that I teach is very playful. It's very in the moment. There's no like plan that's like, we're going to do this, 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 this. It's very intuitive. So it's about reading energy. And for someone who is coming from a very stressed sort of mindset, they're not generally embodied. So I call multidimensional yoga embodied prayer. It allows you to be a physical being, to have a mind, but to decide consciously to let your heart lead you, which is your access to your soul consciousness. So in a way, we kind of have to let go of trying to understand everything and just learn to play with what is here with curiosity rather than judgment. So, in all yoga, we understand that if we combine breath and movement, if we breathe in as we stretch up, and then we start to breathe out as we stretch down, we're starting to synchronize all of the systems of the body. We kind of need to do something very basic first before we can move into more complex postures or more complex breathing practices. But for me, it's been really about deconstructing and simplifying. And so, in a pregnancy yoga class, you're learning moves that are going to help your baby spiral out of the pelvis. And I know I keep going back to this, but it's so important because we don't realize how important the time in the womb and our birth actually are in affecting who we are. So, as I said before, this conditioned being that's always in the mind, that disassociates from the body, that has to do everything perfectly, is one that doesn't feel safe inside. We've given our authority to the outside. We look to others to tell us what to do, including our yoga teachers. So I find that a lot of people have kind of moved, away from religion, and we've gone through this experience of wanting to prove everything, which is the scientific era. And without meaning to, we kind of make yoga a religion as well. We want to follow it right and do it right so we can get the results. But yoga means union. It's about uniting all aspects of our being. It's about welcoming the parts of us that actually we resist, the bits of us that we don't like, the bits of us that we want to hide from the world. And you can't do that if you're bringing more light into your body. So often when I was training teachers, I would find that, they're yoga teachers, but they don't even know how to breathe into their lower belly. That's your sacral chakra. That's your desire fire. That's where you start to get a sense of what really makes me tick, what makes me buzz. Like, what do I want to do next in my life? Not what do I think I should do to be a good person, to make money, or to be successful. So in terms of how long it takes, these days, I'm a multidimensional success coach. I teach multidimensional yoga as a part of my coaching practice because the physical aspect is so important. So many healers and therapists just work with the energy system without working with their bodies. And I find the winning formula is working with both. But if you just work with the body, it's a long, slow process. It took me a good 15 years of just working with yoga and, trying to think positively and, self-help books and YouTube videos, etc., to try and get past my challenges. But it wasn't until I discovered that I had to really work with my subconscious more than just with my breath, more than just with my conscious mind, because the conscious mind is 90% more powerful than the conscious mind. And the subconscious is where all of our beliefs and our expectations and our view of the world is really coming from. So, yoga will help bring more light to where the problem is. But if you're still in judgment, you never move past it. So the idea is that we can bring more light into our bodies, but it's what we do with that next. And this is why I say self-love is about embracing the good, the bad, and the ugly, the yuck in our beingness, and being okay with it. Because when we move beyond judgment and we embrace curiosity, we embrace the idea that we don't need to hide what is there, that we are all one, then we can come into a place where we can let go of the things that normally hold us back, and we can move beyond the glass ceiling that we're used to never being able to get beyond. That could be like a certain level of income, always attracting the same kind of love situation, or always feeling like you're not good enough, right? Like you can bring in positive intention and affirmation, which for me is part of multidimensional yoga. But you have to allow yourself the time and the space to make these changes and to be persistent with it, because however long you've lived a certain way. And we all have this expectation that we can go to a yoga class once a week or 3 times a week and suddenly we've reached enlightenment, right? But, all those muscles that have been flexed one way for so long need to be worked a different way for that new way of being to stick. So I call it like spiritual potty training. Does that make sense to you?
100%. That makes a lot of sense. So you're doing a lot of unlearning of old past programming. So I know that there's a lot of buzzwords out there right now. And one particularly that's going around is Starseeds. And I know that you specifically have shed some light on that. Would you like to expand on the Starseed buzzword? Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So starseed's a bit of a buzzword, and I feel it's so important for us to understand it a little bit more. When people start a journey of self-inquiry, whatever that is, whether it's mindfulness or yoga or another spiritual practice, it's because they're generally dissatisfied with whatever they've learned so far. There's a curiosity for more. And the way I describe starseeds, in my experience, being one myself, is more highly evolved souls. And I don't mean this as a judgment. I just mean they've been around the block a few more times. So typically we come in with a higher consciousness than those that are our family members bringing us up. That's been the truth till now. So very often we experience quite a lot of hardship, emotional trauma, physical trauma, psychological trauma in our early lives, and we're seeking solution. Often we have dependencies, we have addictions, we have anxiety, we may have some kind of label attached to our mental health. And, my daughter's diagnosed ADHD, and the way I describe ADHD is, attention dialed into a higher dimension. It's just not normal, quote unquote, for the average person, but the average person isn't really thinking or feeling beyond, the mainstream narrative. So this explains a little bit more about 3D, 4D, and 5D. And this is another concept around multidimensional yoga. It's how can we be in this world and appreciate it for all its wonder, and recognize that we're kind of plugged into different radio stations. Third dimensional consciousness is the mainstream consciousness. It's what you will encounter when you turn the radio on a mainstream station, or you buy a newspaper, or you watch a television program or the news. And then 4D, it can encompass anything from a religion to a yoga practice to a spiritual practice to a philosophy, even, mind-altering substances and plant medicines, crystals, all sorts of different tools that kind of open us up to there being something more than just the 5 senses and the physical reality. But we can get hugely lost in that realm. And this is why, for me, yoga, as we've known it so far, is very limited. Think about it. Most yoga practices, if you have got a spiritual practice, will talk about 7 chakras. They won't talk about 9. They won't talk about 12 or 15 or 22, unless you've worked with a guru, and this was so that the higher knowledge was not abused. But we're coming to a point in our consciousness and humanity where those of us who've come to this earth to help this planet to ascend, which is the Starseeds, have to remember quickly who we are, what our mission is, why we've come here. And it is to shift the dial from fear running the world to love running the world, which is the 5D consciousness. So I said to you earlier that the world is kind of running on adrenaline. Like you only have to go on, Netflix to see how many programs will get your blood boiling and your energy rushing, and they tend to be scary or thrillers or dramas. There's not that many, feel-good movies and movies that make you feel connected to your soul consciousness. Our entertainment is designed to keep us on the edge of our seats, but not to help us remember who we really are. And so when I talk about 5D consciousness, I'm talking about there's a big difference between manifesting and controlling your reality in a 4D concept versus co-creating your reality by connecting to your soul consciousness and basically being willing to be led by your higher self, being willing to be led by the divine in you, because we're all individual drops in the ocean of the divine, the ocean of source. But we don't know that until we separate from source, go through a 3D journey of being separate. And when I say ego driven, I mean survival driven, like me first, I've got to make sure I'm okay before you're okay. And then we start to become more curious, and we go through this fourth dimensional bridge of inquiring what else is there other than what I've been taught. Often there's quite a lot of rebellion in that as well, until we can then go to a point where we say, well, okay, I can control my reality, but what if I put my soul in control? What happens then? And that is the role of a starseed, is to remember who they are and then teach this to others. And I feel the closest way of describing that is what people would call Christ consciousness. Now, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about compassion as the essence of Christ consciousness. And I have 6 pillars that I really teach in my work, which is transparency, accountability, integrity, discernment, compassion, and forgiveness. And these are really important in multidimensional yoga because they kind of teach you how to be in this world and be able to see beyond your ego programming and discover your blind spots and have a sense of humor, because all of us project what we don't accept, right? All of us, like, the world around us is pretty harsh. I do believe everyone is doing the best they can, but I also believe that the leaders of this world are not very healthy individuals. They're not very heart-led leaders. They don't know how to be because they've got the same trauma as the rest of us, and no one's taught them how to get over it. So a starseed, in another way of describing it, is a being, so a soul, a spiritual being in a physical body that has remembered that they're more than just this physical being. Maybe they have memories of, experiencing lifetimes in other star constellations. Maybe we have memories of not being human. There are so many different ways to describe it, but my excitement with it is that we realize we're here to bring more light and love to the world. And we typically, as I said, come into families that are of a lower frequency than us. And our job is to clear the bloodlines of the karma that would otherwise keep repeating itself in the future generations. So we kind of have a bit of a tough start, but we become master teachers as a result, and we do something wonderful for our ancestors that also frees our descendants. And I truly believe starseeds are here to seed star peace, which is the opposite of Star Wars, and to get everyone addicted to oxytocin, which is the love hormone.
So I know we talked a little bit about manifestation, and a lot of people have different beliefs on whether you're infringing on free will. And I've always been curious about manifesting from a very whole place, whereas manifesting from fear. And Rosie, I know you have a bit of your own opinions on this. Could you expand and shed some light with manifestation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many videos about how to manifest whatever you want, but often people don't realize they're interfering with other people's free will. And for the most part, a lot of the manifestant practices that are taught are kind of ego driven. You can have whatever you want in the material world, which satisfies a soul who's learning more about themselves. But it's also a way of manifesting from an action driven energy, a masculine driven energy. Whereas we need to be the vibration that we want to attract. So, we can say we want $1 million, right? But really what we want is to feel safe materially, right? So we think that $1 million is going to make us feel safe. But, ultimately, is it going to make us feel safe, or are we going to then get it and be scared of losing it? Because we get lost between the sort of symptom and the cause. And we kind of define success as material outcomes. But it's much more about an inner state. And I believe all yoga teaches that to a degree, like whatever, the mainstream and kind of old school and newer methods are. So often I feel people misunderstand this idea of manifesting as one where if you just think positive thoughts, and you do this practice or this ritual, whatever, you're going to be able to change your life and, change a circumstance. But it's much more to me about co-creating. So often when I'm working with my clients, I find that we're very much in the mind still. And when we talk about dropping into the heart, there is this sense that you've got to then abandon the mind, that the mind has to be shut down, that you have to sort of choose one or the other. And, you know, a multidimensional perspective is quite similar to the tantric path in yoga, where everything coexists. There's nothing that's good or bad. It's just, what do you want to energize? So co-creating is about manifesting with your higher self. It's about saying, I want to have this feeling experience. And I believe having this outer manifestation is going to give me this feeling experience. But ultimately, I want this feeling experience. So I think it's the $1 million that's going to give it to me. But I surrender this to my higher self, because what I really want is this feeling of material safety, of being safe in this world and not fearing loss. So we kind of just get a little bit confused with, you know, what does it mean to manifest? In my world, for example, you know, I was a single mother for many years who, you know, lived on very little money, was always overworking, always got the same kind of guy show up in my life who was never committed, you know, didn't really want what I wanted my light, but didn't want to shine his own light. And I was generally dissatisfied, right? So it was in this journey of combining yoga with the emotional mental detox work that I do, which is multidimensional coaching, that led me to then be able to shift my internal vibration to expect on all levels what I wanted to co-create, to know I truly deserved it, I was worthy of it. And by maintaining a vibration of positive anticipation without attachment to outcome, which is hugely important, I was able to then shift my life completely to the point that I'm now married to my sacred union divine counterpart. I have got the best man ever. Like, you know, he's everything I could possibly want and then some. Living in a mortgage-free house, able to charge so much more than I ever did. And a lot of this was about learning that there were subconscious vows of poverty that we take with certain job forms, and yoga's one of them, because of the expectation of it being a spiritual practice that we shouldn't charge for. That's in background conditioning. And, you know, whereas say 3-4 years ago, it's like, oh, $10,000 a month, I've achieved something. Now it's like, yeah, but then when is that enough? Then you have a $10,000 week or a $10,000 day. Has that really changed who you are? What really makes you happy? And, you know, what really makes us happy isn't all of that money or all of those external achievements. It's this idea that we're safe in ourselves, we're loved, we're fulfilled, we feel good with what we do, we know we're supporting people to thrive. And so I feel that we're learning as souls to integrate all aspects of our being, and a big part of that is loving up our shadow. As I said at the start, it's loving the bits of us that we'd rather hide or pretend don't exist or not own. And this is really the spiritual practice, because when we judge others, you know, when we become envious of others, we move straight into lack again. We have this belief that somehow we are separate from them. We're isolated. We can't have it too. But we are connected to infinity. We can have anything we want. We've just got to learn to practice the discipline, the discipleship of maintaining a vibration before we see evidence of what we're seeking to co-create. And by maintaining that vibration, using our yoga practice to activate our earth chakra and our soul chakra, because you need them. You need a minimum of these two chakras active beyond your 7 to bring more of your soul light in. That it's through that vibration shift that the world around you changes and you create something different through your subconscious expectation being aligned with your conscious expectation and your superconscious being in control, which is your soul.
Thank you so much, Rosie, for sharing that wisdom. I think so many people are so unaware of their ego being something that is separate from them. So thank you for expanding on the super conscious, conscious, all of that great stuff, because this is new terminology, I'm sure, to a lot of people who are listening. And with that, I wanted to thank you for opening that up for everyone. But I also wanted to ask, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we kind of wrap up?
Absolutely. Learn the value of investing in yourself, right? Learn the value of the fact that fear is like the Matrix movies, right? Fear is a construct that keeps us stuck. You may have heard it stands for false evidence or false emotion or false expectation appearing real. But it is literally a vibration that erodes your consciousness, your immune system. It makes you contract. Whatever you expect, you attract. That is part of law of attraction, right? It is part of manifesting. We are always a vibrational match for whatever's going on around us. There is also a time lag, though, and that's why it's so important that people learn that when you start doing things a new way, very often there'll be some resistance that comes up in your consciousness, in your world. You might be like intending to be more abundant, and then you get a bill out of nowhere and it can seem like, oh, this isn't working. But it is. Everything is always conspiring to give you what you want. The universe always says yes. So yes, in this world today, we have had a huge fear purge. Like whatever's happened out in the world, I believe has happened to help us to clear at least 4 generations of trauma. By that, I mean the First and the Second World War, and also the fact that we are so heavily programmed and have been for such a long time. Some people will be aware of the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, and, will resonate with what I'm saying on that level to say that we as humans haven't just evolved from apes, from this planet's sort of biology, as it were. I believe very much, as I said before, that our starseed consciousness recognizes there's a connection between our physical human selves and galactic consciousness, if you like. So we've had all these wonderful sages and teachers come through in time to give us important messages. But those messages have always been distorted by humans, because humans can't help but distort a pure message. It's just part of what we're capable of with our minds. So if you are stuck in fear, it's really important to recognize that you have a choice. You can either say, well, this is the way it is and it's the way it's always going to be, or you can seek out teachers who you feel do not have that feeling in them. There will be people that inspire you. There will always be a teacher around that is offering you an arm, a hand to say, come on, things don't need to be like this. But you are going to need to go through the discomfort of moving beyond what you know, the familiar, uncomfortable comfort zone, they call it. And, this is the practice of changing who you are. It's not about creating a new person. It's about removing the different layers of illusion that hold you trapped where you don't want to be. So, purely physical practices will start you there, like long out breaths, deep breathing. People are really into mindfulness. These are good starting points. Physical yoga, getting your body flowing. This whole thing about multidimensional yoga isn't that it's new postures. I did create a star salutation, which was downloaded back in 2017. And for me, this is the missing piece of our consciousness at this time, because we've been through the, sun salutation of the patriarchy and the moon salutation of the matriarchy. But now it is the time of the divine child. It is the time of the creator within us to create from love rather than fear. And that means that we have to recognize that the inner wounds we have don't need to define who we are anymore. It's important for us to be inspired by those who seem to have what we want, and then to seek to align with that rather than to make a million excuses as to why we can't. And there is a teacher for every being, there are different teachers offering things at different levels of pricing, etc. And I would just always say, start where you can. I have this practice called the Star Salutation Prosperity Practice. That's my giveaway on my website. That is literally to give people a chance to believe that they can start to make a change in their life by combining a physical practice with some simple tapping, which people will know as EFT. And it just opens you up to what I'd call your divine architecture. And that is something else I teach in the multidimensional yoga, is you need to have your light body active. That some people will know that as a Merkaba field, right? Your Merkaba 6-pointed star. You need to have your core line active, which is your connection to source and to Gaia. You need to have the outer boundary of your energy field nice and strong. You need the boundary of your physical body alive and plugged in. This is like plug into more, right? So just remember that you don't have to stay stuck. And when opportunities do come along, allow yourself the gift of valuing yourself enough to invest in you, because most of us only invest in like basically whatever is going to give us a qualification rather than our own rewiring of our circuitry. And I wish everybody had the opportunity to rewire their early circuitry, because we'd live in a very different world today. And then we would be able to learn how to co-create our reality systematically, recognizing that a regular yoga practice that has the different elements I've mentioned already as a part of it allows you to have way more epiphanies, way more possibilities available to you, way more miracles in your life daily. Like magic happens. We make the mundane magical. And that's what excites me. It's getting people to start asking questions they haven't asked before, and to really get buzzed by the fact that the world is quite different to what they expected. It's going to annoy them initially. It might make them angry to feel that they're so programmed already and stuck in their programming. But it's only when you notice something that something can change as a result of it. So embrace the discomfort, ask for more. Know that you deserve so much better than you could even believe is possible. Like, most of us are not aiming high enough. Have a mission, have a dream, and be aware of what voice you're listening to in your mind, because there's always going to be like the angel and the devil, if you like. And it's like, what do you want to feed in your life? You've got two different bank accounts you can fill. You can fill the negativity bank account or the positivity bank account. Ultimately, we're moving beyond duality into oneness. But if you want things to change in your life, then you're going to need to put a lot of your energy into that positivity bank to really feel the benefits and the divine legacy that is your birthright.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And for everyone who's listening, I will have Rosanna's information in the show notes. So take a peek at her website and everything that she's talking about. Also, where can they find you on Instagram if they want to kind of touch base or anything like that?
These days, I am on Instagram as Rosie Glow. I am on Facebook as Rosie Glow. The best place to come and meet me for sure is to join my mailing list on RozyGlow.com. And that way you'll access this star salutation practice. But also, my yoga's virtual these days. I really wanted to make my yoga accessible to everybody. And, I invite yoga teachers to come and try it out and experience this multidimensional perspective, because it blows your mind. It puts the plan away and all the rules away that you're used to. And I do believe people should know the rules before they break them. But it's one where learning to access that inner teacher is so important. And to make something available to everyone, whether they catch the replay or they join me live, is my joy. I feel like when we all come together and we hold the same intention, it is so amplified. And when you recognize your yoga practice as an embodied prayer that isn't just giving you energy, but it's also feeding the planet and all of humanity and all sentient beings this vibration. We're all acupuncture needles that are unblocking the flow of whatever's going on planet Earth. And each of us is responsible for our vibration. So that means that, rather than being concerned about what other people are doing, whether it's right or wrong, maintain your vibration. Are you in love? Are you in fear? How can you get yourself out of fear quickly? There are so many simple practices. Simplify the yoga. And YouTube. Rosie Glow YouTube is where I offer a new moon co-creation meditation every month. I do quite a lot of videos about specific subjects for Starseeds, multidimensional consciousness. And then I have an inner circle as well for those who want to join either monthly yoga or the full moon meditations, the online courses that I run. Got some phenomenal multidimensional coaches that are training at the moment. And honestly, it's just amazing. Life is amazing if you allow it to be, and you look for a system that will support you to learn how to deal with the unfamiliar and the unknown. Then you can access uncharted territory and be like your own magical world and the captain of your own ship. And it's not going to be fair weather sailing all the time. What I train people to do is to handle their vehicle in life in whatever weather conditions. Then you stop being scared and you embrace the mystery. You embrace everything in such a way that you stop judging it as good or bad, and you just allow this beautiful experience. Because from the moment you're born until the moment you die, there's one thing that's going to be with you the whole time, and that is your breath. And that breath is precious. It's brings your source consciousness into you, and it allows everything to be possible.
Thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Reawakening Beauty. Subscribe to the podcast, hear more inspirational stories and tips related to all things mind, beauty, skin, and soul. I also encourage you to check out the show notes for additional information about my guest, the topics discussed during the episode, and of course, more information about me, your host, Shawna Patruno. If you want to be a guest on the show or just want to reach out and say hi, you can reach me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or email. All these details can be found in my show notes. Thank you so much for listening and have an amazing day.